And then if you didn't get it, we can resend that um, to you guys. That's presented as a script, if you will. We try to make it as simple and clear as possible. But I want to take you to the logic behind it. There's a reason. There are reasons, many reasons why we build it the way we do. We did, and obviously you can adjust and do whatever you want with it. But we felt like it was probably a good way to give you some structure and confidence about making that first connection, that first contact, which is important because you're going to be sometimes walking into an environment that you're not familiar with, and you need to feel like you're armed with the best possible tool in order to take the system to the next level. So the first element is really the opening hook. And we believe that the conversational component to this is very critical. So you're going to walk in, you're going to either talk to the front desk person or a sonographer and ask to get connected to the lead sonographer. The doctor is usually not necessarily the first person you're going to go to. It's probably going to be one of the sonographers, hopefully the lead sonographer. And the idea is to use the Canon brand as the leverage. Canon is known as the 8th most recognizable brand in the world year in, year out. The last 2025 ranking was ranking Canon as 8. So people know about Canon. They know about the cameras. They know about the printers. They don't necessarily know that they're doing medical. So that's the angle. You're bringing them awareness of something that they don't know, right? So that's a good talking point. You take something that they know about, the Canon brand, and then you connect to that knowledge that they have about Canon or the awareness about Canon, a whole new world that, hey, your world that you're working in right now, the high-end cardiovascular imaging, Canon is a player in that space. So did you know that Canon makes high-end cardiovascular ultrasound system is a great entry point because it actually brings them to the conversation. You tie them up with something that they know, and then you translate that into their work environment. And following up with making the Canon connection, not just the brand, but then moving from Canon in the camera to Canon medical, try to explain that, right? Because it's not necessarily obvious for people to think, well, I'm not going to buy a machine, an ultrasound machine from a camera company. You need to kind of basically immediately bridge that gap. And one way to do that is to say, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. They've been taking the most beautiful picture of the outside world for 90 years. Now they're taking the most beautiful picture of the inside world and help you take better care of patients. So in less than a minute or so, you tied something that they recognize, the brand. You added a layer of knowledge to the brand that, hey, that brand is operating into the world that I live in, my work world. And yeah, it does make sense that they're connected together and they can do that. So as the follow-up to that, you say, because they're so good, they're actually providing a much superior imaging system. And in order to do that, how are we doing that? How is Canon now an imaging specialist in ultrasound? Well, you can give them the answer right away. It's because they re-engineered the ultrasound machine from the ground up. They actually took their knowledge from the imaging side, the outside world imaging side, and redesigned a system from the ground up that has two unique specifications. It can create a special beam forming technology, and it uses a different engine. So in the beam forming here is important, okay? And I just want to spend a minute here because in the world of ultrasound, people know that the beam forming capabilities of your ultrasound machine is what ultimately will give you the best image. The difference between a bedside crappy handheld ultrasound system that costs $5,000 and the high-end cardiovascular ultrasound system at $200,000 is the beam former. That's what makes the machine imaging better, right? So if you tell the people, hey, it's better because I'll tell you that they rebuilt everything from the ground up and we build a different beamforming. It's thinner, it's better, it creates better images. And not only our beamforming capability is great, our ability to process the information that comes back is all done through our GPU, our graphic processing unit. And because of that, we turn medical imaging into a high-end video game. So what you're doing right now is that you're building instant credibility from a customer standpoint because you're coming up to them, you tied them up around the Canon idea, and now you're telling them why this Canon box is better than what I have right now. And you're telling them it's because we have a better beamforming technology and we process the information through the GPU. So these are two technical differentiator that your customer will understand immediately, and saying it's basically turning, as a summary, it's basically turning medical imaging into high-end video games. People can connect to that. They're like, yeah, video games are amazing and the imaging processing of video games are amazing. So I can see why these two are coming together. And then you close this loop. You close this loop by giving them two concrete examples of how a better beamforming technology and a better GPU allows them to get better clinical capabilities. And the first one is obvious to you now because you've heard about it. You heard about it many times. And it's as a consequence of that, we can create contrast-like images without contrast agent. And that will get people's attention immediately because that's a unique feature. When you do inject ultrasound contrast with patients, it makes the exam longer. You got to put an IV in. You got to shake it up. You got to retake a lot of pictures now with the contrast in. It makes everything longer. It costs more money. It disrupts their workflow. And, it's not necessarily something they love to do. They only do it when they have no choice, when the quality of the baseline picture is not great. If you give them an alternative of, you can get a contrast-like study on most patients by just pushing a button on your machine in a microsecond, that will get their attention. So bringing in the SMI or the contrast-like capability to them up front is really a way to get their attention. Like they're going to want to continue that conversation because you got them on the Canon side. Then you take them up of saying, we're different, we're built differently. And that translates into giving you unique capability. And one of them is to do contrast without contrast. They're going to be, hey, wait a minute, I want to know more about this. And not only it allows you to do contrast without contrast, but it allows you to scan tough patients easier. So it's going to make you look better. It's going to provide better images to your doctor, and it's going to allow you to look better as a sonographer because you're going to capture better images. Your exam are not going to be as long. Your workflow is not going to be as disrupted because you're not going to struggle as much to get the images. So it's going to make your life better. And that's the circle. You took them from the brand to why are we different technically and clinically. How does that translate into taking better care of patients? And if you follow those 3 steps, you're going to get them engaged because you took something that they knew, you increased their awareness, they have now the technical reasons behind it, and then you provide them evidence that it's better by saying we have unique capabilities, contrast without contrast, and imaging very tough study. So the only natural next step from there is you got to see this for yourself. You might not believe me. It might sound too good to be true, but you got to see this for yourself. So when can we come in? How do we set up a demo? What's your environment here? Who do we need to talk to? How do we schedule things, right? You already set up your next element, which is we got to come and demo. you pique their interest enough, you're different enough compared to what they used to see and what they can hear from the competition, that you now have the ability to open that door and come in for a demo. So these are the steps, and this is what we thought was actually a very effective way to lead to probably start gathering now at this point some information about how many machines they have, what are, what kind of machines, how old are they, how many do they need now, are they growing, do they like their machines, what they don't like about it, just to try to fill in the information from the intake form, and then prepare you for maybe some possible objections at that point. They might put back at that point. And one pushback that we've seen before is, we already use this and that machine, and we're not really interested in changing. And that's an opportunity for you to come in and say, okay, well, tell me more about the machines you have, and gather information about what they like and don't like. So you can use that to continue the conversation about what they don't like, and maybe we can make that better. Or the other objection is, we don't have time for a demo. We're very busy. We're very important. And the idea is, when we come and do a demo, we're going to match your clinical workflow. So we don't need to we can just do overscan of some elements that are hard to do on the other machine and compare side by side. So coming in and do a demo for you, we're going to adjust to your need. We just want to reassure them that it's not going to be as disruptive as they believe it may be. We're going to work with them and just give them the opportunity to try the system. So these are the steps that we put together that we believe will likely get you to at least continuing the conversation to possibly setting up a demo. You might not be able, but at least you have some contact, you have some connection, you started gathering some information, you can send them material if you have their contact information, the PDF material, and start that conversation, right? So that's the idea behind it. And if Debbie, you allow me for a minute before we go to the share your experience so far on the ground, I'm just going to role play a little bit how this can be done, right? I broke it down here, but this could be easily wrapped in a 2 to 3 minute conversation with the sonographer, right? And it could be completely natural. And you guys are absolutely extraordinarily good at creating those human connections and having those conversations. As long as you have the knowledge and you have the structure in your head, you can obviously readjust and turn, but you have all the pieces and elements. So it could go this way. I'm walking in, I'm talking to either the front person, the secretary, ask them to see if there's a sonographer available. You're from representing the Canon brand, and you would like to talk to them about high-end cardiovascular ultrasound, new systems. And when you get in touch with that sonographer or even the doctor, they could send you directly to the doctor too if it's in a clinic or an environment where the doctor is available. You say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, sonographer so-and-so, very nice meeting you. Did you know that Canon has a high-end cardiovascular ultrasound? And actually, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? Canon is known for their camera, and Canon is known for their printer. So they're really experts at imaging, digital imaging of the outside world. And they've been doing it wonderfully for 90 years. Now they give you the opportunity to leverage that technology and take the best picture of the inside world. And that's your patient. And that could allow you to actually take better care of those people. How do we do this? Well, technically, they re-engineered the entire system from the ground up, and they kind of created a different beamforming technology and a different processing capability to their graphic processing unit. So because we have a great beamforming technology and we have great processing power, it basically turns medical imaging into a video game. And as you know, video games are very high quality images nowadays, and it's done with movement, and the heart moves and there's flow. So it's the perfect kind of application for leveraging their expertise and knowledge. Now, you might be wondering, better beamforming and all of this. How does that going to help me clinically? Well, it creates unique feature that the system has that others don't. And one of the low-hanging fruit is obviously contrast without contrast. How would you like to be able to reduce the utilization of contrast on your patients by just pushing a button? No need for IVs, no need to shake the medicine, no need to have somebody else come and inject. You can actually get a contrast-like feature on the system to the push of a button and reduce and get the same amount of quality and the same quality of what a contrast study would do. And because we have all these capabilities, we can do that. That also allows you to take better images of hard patient to scan. So those very difficult studies where it takes longer and you're struggling getting the images, with this power that we have in the machine, it's going to make your life better as a sonographer. You're going to get better pictures in less amount of time. And if you combine that with the ability to do contrast without contrast, that's a no-brainer, right? You got to see this for yourself. You might not believe me. That's fair. But you got to see this for yourself. When can we come in? And boom, you wrapped it up, right? That's not hard. That's a conversation. And you really take them from something they know of the outside world to something they know in their world to good clinical, good technical reasons at why it's better to how does that impact my clinical life. So Canon, the brand, move on to Canon Medical, move on to technical, move on to clinical. You got to see this for yourself. You gave them all the reasons for them to look at it. You almost put them in a situation that it's going to be impossible for them to say, you know what, I'm not interested in any of that. I don't want contrast without contrast. I don't want better images, right? Like you're setting them up to really, really narrow the number of pushbacks that they can present to you because you do bring them from one level to the other, to the other, to the other. You're holding their hands, but now at the end of the road, there's no out. They have to look at it for themselves. Okay, that's it. I'm done on my side. I see Rob is on the line here. I see on the video. Rob is also our marketing expert, and he's done a lot of launch product in the space. And he was, a big part of the mastermind behind the 2-pager that we created here. Rob, I'm just going to give you an opportunity here. Do you have anything to add into the thinking of how we were approaching this?
No, thanks, Dr. Vizina. Nice to meet everybody. No, I think you nailed it fantastically. To be honest, it's very, very simple. We were able to condense this down into a sub 3-minute window, and even to the point in the 1-pager, if we're getting objections or folks with existing systems, and we've got kind of some adversity there. There's some objection options for you there as well. So other than that, I think it's a great tool. Leveraging that Canon brand is huge, and I think just starting with that is a great way to kick things off.
What was really fascinating this morning in the previous session we had was Gary from San Francisco. He actually used a little bit of a variation of that. And he focused first when he went to address the procurement side of things. He assumed that basically it was a financial deal. So he didn't go to the clinical people immediately. He went to the business side of the operation and presented the contrast reduction, the reduction of use of contrast as really a hook from a financial standpoint, because contrast is expensive and it takes longer and it blunts your productivity. So if you can reduce the use significantly, that could actually be a great argument to now you have the financial side of things starting to think about, oh, well, this is different, this is new, and that could actually, marry very well with the clinical aspect. What we presented today was really on the clinical aspect. Gary was really focusing on the financial aspect. And I think Stacy is going to have something to share with us later, because we kind of ran that trial a little earlier this week at one of her accounts, and I'll be interested to get her opinion on it. Debbie, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, you know, Dr. V, I can always talk. So let me let me add my experience, guys. I was out in Dallas and stopped up to cardiology, asked for a sonographer, and they happened to walk right into the receptionist area. So he stepped out to chat with me and stayed for about 20 minutes. And it was interesting because he gave me not only his contact info for a demo, but the information for his chief of cardiology and the lead sonographer as well. So we were able to take this 2-pager that we just went through, and I was able to do a little copy and pasting for some intro email um, verbiage. And then Dr. V was actually able to add some biography things about himself and the fact that Dallas does some reciprocation with Salt Lake City, where he came from, and they actually are using a machine. So we should note, Dr. V, that we do have a current VA user of Canon ultrasound, and that is Salt Lake City. So it's just been extremely fun. I was at Miami the next time and introduced it to some residents who said, I have no decision making, but I'd love to see it. Gave us the names of the folks that we would reach out to for those demos. Stopped into Austin, and those folks in cardiology want to come up to Dallas for the demo when we're able to secure that. So 3 for 3 for interest, and it's just really exciting. As he said earlier, selling one machine and you're affecting 3,500 patients. So I feel like with patient care at the forefront of all of our minds, that's a really important statistic. Also, I want to bring up that one of the questions asked in the chat was what percentage of patients require contrast, and what differentiates the patients from the rest that would not need it. So earlier, Dr. V said about 25% is what they represent for patients that need contrast. However, in his practice with veterans and critically ill, it can be up to 40%. So one of the things I said when we're going through our 30-second elevator pitch is to remember our sales practice of asking questions. And I think it would be really interesting for you to be genuine in your question to the sonographers and just ask, what have been your experience with patients that maybe had a difficult time receiving contrast, could not receive contrast? Overall, what has been your experience having to use contrast with your patients for ultrasounds? And just let them talk and tell you. He had a sonographer that they could not implement contrast. And so that patient wasn't able to get the critical diagnostics that doctor needed to make some decisions on their care. And so what you hold in the palm of your hand here is extremely important for patient care and for these physicians and for these sonographers to be able to get a good image. So I want to make sure that we're asking those questions and we're genuine in wanting to listen and hear about the scenarios that they may have had in the past. Also asked was how much is the contrast, and I think it was told on average the contrast is about $150. So we're going to continue to have calls and update each other on successes, and make sure also, like Tiffany had mentioned, she's in an endoscopy room today with her physicians, and she also worked with an anesthesiologist that has an anesthesia practice over 8 facilities. So those connections and doctors that she works with are all important people to be reaching out to for referrals. Because I think Dr. V can tell you that his physician world and surgeon world is a tight world, and they know each other. And so you might have folks that that you've worked with in wound care or podiatry or orthopedics that could introduce you to someone on the cardiology side. So let's make sure we're using and taking advantage of those referrals. Who's got
Maybe
something to share?
You brought up a very good point here about why do we need to use contrast? That's actually a very good question. Why aren't we using contrast on all patients? And the answer is contrast was developed to help image the walls of the heart better on patients that were not imaging greatly. So if the patients are bigger, they have lung disease, they're obese, or they're on a ventilator, all of that are natural elements that are fighting against your ultrasound signal and might translate into a suboptimal image, right? Instead of being able to recognize the heart and the structures as you would usually, it looks more like a snowstorm. It's a bunch of white dots and you see something moving in the back, but it's hard to know where the heart muscle starts and ends and how much it moves. The contrast goes in the bloodstream and enhance the blood on the ultrasound. The contrast makes the blood look wider, brighter. So by default, if you see where the blood goes to, then the structures around it, the valves, the walls, they become more obvious to your eyes. So you use contrast in order to help you do the basic interpretation of the images. So 25% is what has been reported in the literature, that about a patient out of 4 would benefit to get contrast because the quality of their pictures is not great and not enough to be diagnostics or diagnostic quality as you deal with sicker patients and especially, advanced heart failure or inpatient cardiology services. It's going to be more than that. And if you don't use contrast, then you can't really say anything about the study, right? So having the ability to going through your image, you did the best that you could as a sonographer, manipulating the transducer, adjusting the settings, and my image is still not perfect. And I just push a button and then all the blood lights up on my image like I would just inject great contrast in it and allows me to see everything. And I capture that clip. You just made my day. You just made my day because every time you have to move to a contrast study, it takes 15 minutes longer. You got to put an IV in. You got to shake the contrast. The contrast comes in a little powder form, right? And you got to add saline to it, put it in a shaker for 45 seconds. Then you got to take it out of the bottle into a syringe, mix it again, and then inject it. Often you can't do both, image and inject at the same time. So you need to ask somebody to come in the room to inject at the same time that you image. You need to take a bunch of new images. All of that makes your exam 15 minutes longer. And now you're behind on your schedule. And if you can go around that in many cases, this is a unique feature that I want to have access to, especially if it's as easy as just pushing the button, right? My sonographers, when we started using it in Salt Lake City, they basically were doing it on everybody. They were doing image without SMI, add SMI, second clip. So we had every patient add the image with and without SMI. And that made the study, all the studies, so much higher quality. So that's a very attractive feature here, in addition to the cost. Now, here's the other side of contrast. It's fail contrast, right? So you got a patient who refuses to get the IV, or you got a patient that he said, okay, I'm going to do the contrast, but they cannot get the IV in because he's got bad veins. So 3 people came, poked him 3 different times, still no IV in. You're 15 minutes later, and now you have a baseline study that's not as great as you wanted to. So that's why you needed contrast. You couldn't really answer the questions. You couldn't actually do the study. You poked the patient 3 times. You made everything longer, and you're nowhere near giving them an answer. The family is unhappy. The patient is unhappy, and you're unhappy because your schedule just got screwed up. So if you have the ability to prevent all that nonsense by just on your workflow, just pushing a button, even if it's not good 100% of the time, it's still worth it. Like, that's a wonderful, wonderful clinical tools that could be leveraged, and they want to get access to it.
So Dan, I think William's question, however, is, so once you try SMI, what percentage of patients will still need contrast? So, you try SMI, but there are going to be some patients who might still require a contrast study, but at least
So what happens is that evolves, right? When they first start using SMI, they need to convince themselves that it's as good as the contrast. So often they will do both. They will do SMI and then they'll do contrast and then they'll compare the images. Is very quickly, within a handful of patients, they realize, oh, really, I really don't need to do contrast. I can really trust this. So it goes from no change within days to a lot of change to eventually within weeks to about a 95% reduction. We in Salt Lake City, we reduced our utilization of contrast by 95%.
That's amazing statistic.
The 5% of patients that we were still using contrast were VAD, left ventricular, basically mechanical heart. And there was so much hardware in their chest that even if you use contrast, you couldn't see a lot of stuff anyway. But people still felt like, oh well, let's just do contrast and to show that we tried everything to get the best possible image. But it's an evolution. But that evolution was validated over and over and over again. We lost a lot of sonographer during COVID, and that gave me an opportunity to scan a lot. But then after COVID got better, we started hiring contract workers, right? So they would come for a 6 month contract sonographer. These people never used Canon before. They never used SMI before. And you could see it from day to day. On their first day that they started using SMI, they still did contrast on all the patients that they were not happy with. And then on the second day, less. And on the third day, less and less and less and less. And by the time you're a couple of weeks in, very rarely they were using contrast. They were using SMI. And then the use of SMI went up because now even on great patients that were imaging pretty good, they were like, well, I have nothing to lose. I'll just get another additional image on SMI. It takes me half a second, and that makes my study even better. I show everything and I make sure that I cover all my angles. So it became actually an incentive to do better.
So there was also a question by Robert to ask about a return on investment page. That was something that I think the team asked for at our training, where we could put something together to talk about the reduction in clinician time, being able to see more patients in a day, the return on investment from not having to use 90 to 95% of the contrast, and the fact that our systems are less expensive. And I'm sure that you can think of even more value-added return on investment things. So we'll request that. Team, we also requested in the morning meeting, and they're working on videos. So they're going to start to be able to put together videos that you could share via your phone or an iPad with a QR code. We could put it on our literature that you can show the difference between the other systems imaging and ours without contrast. I do want to take a few minutes though and open the floor to you to see who's had a chance to have some conversations so that we can get some of the new feedback.
Yep. Hi, Debbie. This is Stacy.
Hi there.
Hi. And I have had a conversation with, one sec, sorry. I've had a conversation with one of the healthcare systems with Dr. Dan, which it was very insightful. Got a bunch of good information, and she ended up asking a lot of questions that was helpful with Dr. Dan. But anyway, I just think that showing empathy and asking patients is, asking whoever you're talking to about the IVs, like we had mentioned in training, and that seemed to be like a hot topic when I was talking to Deanna, my contact, and I told her that I actually forewent getting one done, an ultrasound with contrast, just because of the whole fact of I didn't want a needle. There was no way in hell they were putting an IV in me. So I can be a good testament to that. But when you make it more relatable to them, and it just makes it more real, like, oh, well, they get it. So I don't know, just little feedback. And I'm driving, so I'm not using my full capacity of my brain. So I apologize.
That's a great example.
I think from the
though.
conversation so that conversation we've had with Stacy was with Henry Ford in Detroit, and Adina was on the clinical review side, right? She's kind of the master of all clinical review for the system. And what really got her attention was everything surrounding better technology that gives unique capability to the system. So she liked the fact that SMI was unique. She liked the fact that it could lead to a reduction of cost, improving um, efficacy, improving workload, uh, all these elements that are associated outside just the better quality, all the surrounding elements attached to saving money, seeing more patients. Um, that's something that caught on to her because as the clinical review person, she needs to go through a checklist of criteria to why are we going to get this new product in? We have products that are doing this right now. What is this product going to do differently? And yeah, it's built differently. Well, how does that translate into different? Well, you reduce your risk of having an extended exam. You reduce the cost attached to the contrast. You reduce the time wasted on doing the additional images on difficult patients. You improve the patient satisfaction by giving them the answer without having to add extra steps. So these elements is what really she caught on. And then she became our champion. I saw her face. She changed immediately to, tell me more about this to, oh, no, I want to be part of this. And she brought up the people in the operating room that she knew on the cardiac anesthesia side that would love to do a demo. And then she also, brought up the cardiologist and she started doing the work internally. So, Stacy didn't even go to meet with those people yet. And she's doing the work to open the doors right now on both the cardiology side and the surgery side, all of that through a call. It was a very good call because, Stacy prepared her and she has a unique relationship with that clinical review supervisor. But that was very helpful because she caught on to the advantages and then became our internal champion to take us to the next level. So we turned her into, I'm not sure, to a, wait, I want to be part of this. So that was a huge win. And all of that happened in 26 minutes. The whole thing took 26 minutes from the beginning of the call to the end of the call. So,
and let's keep in mind, guys, that what Stacy did is really important. If you know you're going to step in and make a call and it's your first cold call, or you just want to have a backup, let Dr. V know. Get on a call with him before to rehearse it. Tell him you're going to be walking in between 1 and 2 on Tuesday of next week, and could he be available if you needed him via speakerphone? So make sure you use your resources. We have 40 or 50 different companies that we represent, and not everyone has the same amount of support. I think Dr. V and this team have demonstrated how much support they're willing to give you in the field. So make sure that you remember to don't fly solo.
yeah, oh, absolutely. I would love to be part of all these conversations. Absolutely. Not a problem. It's always yes.
We got a couple minutes left. Does anyone other than Stacy and I have any talk tracks this week about Guardsman or any questions you want to ask in addition to the chats?
Well, let's go out there and make some connections here.
Absolutely. And remember, guys, you've got your intake form. It's on the share drive. It was in our packets. It's been emailed to you. I'm going to send out this recording as well. But the key is to start talking about it. And, Erickson out on the Navajo reservation, this product is extremely important because cardiology is not done in-house out there. They're usually transferred to the big cities. So if they can make some quicker determination at these rural locations, it's going to be really helpful for them, and maybe stave off some last minute helicopter rides and that type of thing. So make sure you have your literature. I know some folks have been asking about literature, Dr. B, as far as whether or not you'll be able to, with the new QR codes, perhaps print off a batch and get them mailed out to each of the reps so they have something to walk in with.
Okay. So you would prefer something printed to something like just the QR code and pulling the PDF file?
It's not our preference really. It's what makes the difference for the reps and being able to get out there. So if you walk up with nothing in your hand and nothing to leave behind, especially if you don't have someone to meet with, it's just nice to have a reason to go back, to have that literature, to drop it off with your business card. It's an important selling tool.
Okay. We'll just reconnect, you and I, Debbie, to try to master the logistics around this, to get access, to provide access to this, the material to them.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, it's 4 o'clock on a Friday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. So have a great weekend. Again, Guardsman team, thank you so much for facilitating this call and all the support you give us. And I'm excited for our next call to see where we're at in maybe 30 days.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yep.